Hello everyone, welcome to Zaref Game Dev. This video I am going to make the colors and shapes game in Unity. So let's first start by creating the design document. In the design document, first we have the image, so how the game should look. So the game would look something like this. And let's see the basic outline. So in the basic outline, first we have the board of the game, and in the board we have multiple positions, and each position is indexed at a number, and at each cell we have a shape which has a color. And when for each turn, first we'll roll the card, and the card will have four options. Either will move forward two steps, or will move back one step, or will roll a shape, or will roll a color. So if any of that options happen, and if we roll a shape, then we'll move to the next shape which matches the roll. And if we roll a color, then we move to the next color which matches the roll. And the game finishes till the last player is remaining. And for any of the player, if it reaches the end, his turn finishes. So let's see the basic scripting. So in the basic scripting, just we have the start and the quit function, and there will be a game message, and there's a game board prefab and the card prefab. And the card prefab will have multiple animations for rolling the color, card, or the shape. And the last thing would be a player prefab, which will be a game piece which we created in the last video for the snakes and ladders. I'll be using it. So let's see how we'll start creating the game in Unity. So first we need to have the scene. So we'll create the scene and save it as a new scene and add the title. Or in this game we don't need the title, so we'll just add the start and the quit buttons. And we'll create the game manager and set up the canvas so it scales properly. Then we should have the start and the quit button, and let's import the sprites. So after importing the sprites, the first thing we need to set up is the card animation. So let's set up the card animations. And in the card animation, I'll just copied it from the last video because the design is the same. It will contain a card, and inside that card it will have a sprite, which first will set it to a roll a color, and it will have a box collider 2D because we need to click it. And next up, we'll set its trigger to true, and we'll set it stack to card, and it will have a card script. So inside the card script, we need to trigger multiple animations. And the first animation will create in the animator controller will be the idle, and the next animation will be the roll card, which will call the function set random card at each frame. It will be a 12 frame animation, and it has 6 frames per second. And similarly for the roll shape and the roll color. And for each roll in the card script, we'll create its sprites. So for the card, we'll have the card sprites, the shape sprites, and the color sprites. And we'll need a reference to the card type and the choice types, so we can set at the end of the animation the respective card. So that was for the card animation. And after creating the card animation, let's see if I can click it in the game manager. So in the game manager, we'll need first two booleans, is the has game finished and has clicked. At the awake, the has game finished will be false and can click will be true. And the public string, which is the game state, which updates the state. So at the start of the game state will be roll a card. And when we roll a card, then the game state will change. So the game state will say roll a color or roll a shape, whatever the game state is. And depending on the game state, will roll the colors or the shapes. So in the update, for just checking, we'll first see if the game is finished or we cannot click it. So we won't update anything. And then we'll check for the mouse button pressed. And if the mouse button is pressed, then we'll do a raycast. And if we hit anything, and that hits tag is card, then we'll do the following. So first, we'll switch on the game state. So if the game state is equal to that roll a card, then we'll roll the card and we'll call it in the card tag. So here it is. First for the roll card, we'll set the game state and call the roll card, and we'll set clicking to false. And in the roll card animation at the end, we'll set clicking to true. So whenever the animation finishes, in the set whatever it is, set color, card, or shape, will set can click to true, or we'll call the move player function. So we have the roll card. So if the game state is roll card, then we'll roll the card and set the game state. And if the game state is roll color, then we'll set the player choice, because we need the player choice to uh, use in the following functions. Because uh, so when we move the player, we'll move it depending on the player choice, and similarly for the roll shape. And the last two cards are the move forward 2 step and the move back 1 step. For now, we'll do nothing. We'll just set can click to false, and will just remain as it is. And in the switch type, we won't create anything. So next we'll instantiate the player. So the player is just going to be a sprite, and it will have a player script, or here it will be a p script. And in the p script, we'll just have a list of colors and a function to set the color. So depending on the player, we'll set the color and we'll instantiate it. And in the game manager, we'll create these 4 players. And uh, to create these players, we'll need the 4 player types. So we'll create here as 6. So we'll create 6 players. So we'll loop 6 times, and we'll create the 6 players, which are the red, blue, green, yellow, purple, and orange. And we'll instantiate that game object, and we'll set its transform to the start position and reference it to the dictionary and to that player. So we can get that player depending on the player, get that piece depending on the player. So uh, after this step, we'll have the player instantiated and the animation should work. But now for the player to move, we need the board. So we'll be creating the board script, and inside the board script, I'll have this enums, the separate constant scripts. So we'll have a list of players and a dictionary from player to integer types to store the players position. And then another dictionary which will tell at that integer if we select a choice. So it will return a dictionary at that integer, it will return a dictionary, and for that choice it will return a position. So if we pass the position, then we pass the choice, then we'll get an integer which refers to the choice at that location. So we'll have it, and in the constructor we initialize players position and the move positions, as well as the dictionary. And in the update position, we'll pass the player and the player choice, and depending on the player choice, we'll move the player, and we'll move the player at move positions, and where we want to move at the player pose of current player. So player pose stores the current player's position, and we'll pass it to the move position. And inside that move positions, we need to pass the player choice. So it will return a dictionary, and we'll pass the player choice. So we'll get an index, and we'll add 1 to the index till we reach it, and then we'll update the player position, and then we'll return. So we'll have one more update pause, and we'll override it because we need for the move forward 2 steps and the move back 2 steps. And here we'll pass, instead of the choice, we'll pass the difference, so which is the 2 and the -1. and we'll set the index to add that difference. And if index is out of range, then we'll return an empty list. Else we'll add or subtract depending on the difference, and we'll create a result out of it. So after that, we should be having the board ready and be able to update the position. So next up, we'll have the moving the player. So for moving the player, we'll call it in the set color and the set shape, the card script, and we'll call that to from the move player, which is the indifference, and we'll pass the update player of difference, and we'll call it in the move forward 2 steps and the move back 1 step state. So in the move player, first we'll get the results, and then we'll set the game state, and then we'll call the move function on the game object depending on the player choice, which reference it at the start. We have created dictionary, and then there is one edge case which is for the swaps. So in here you can see where is it? In here you can see there's a switch stop, so I'm calling it swap, and if that swap condition is triggered, then we'll switch the players. So we'll check for that swap, and similarly for the difference we'll get the results, and everything else is same. And if we reach the end, then we'll remove that player and we'll set the current player, and then we'll check if the last player is remaining, then we'll finish, and then we'll increase the current player count, and if it will set it to a percentage of count. So if it increases beyond count, it will set to 0, and that's for the game manager. And to move the player, we have called the move function on the game object. It's similar to the last video. We'll first check can move. We cannot move, then we'll return, and we'll set the target position. We'll check if the distance is less, then we'll increase the index, and if the index is the last index, then we won't move. And to set movement, we'll just set that list to pass the results, and we'll get the transforms from the index to positions created in the game manager. And the next one is just for move forward and move backwards. So in that, so uh, it's for the check swap. So in just check swap, we'll add at the end of the list where we need to move, and the check swap is going to be in the game manager. So in check swap, we'll check if the position is 20. So because in here it's at 20th position, and if it is 20, uh, if it is not 20, then we don't need to do the check swap, but if it is 20, then we'll get the result and we'll only pass the current player. And if we get something, we'll get it because we have checked if it has it. Okay, may or we may or may not get it, so we'll update the current player's position, and for each player in result need to add a condition if the result.count is greater than 0. So if result.count is less than 0, then we won't do anything. If result.count is greater than 0, then we'll update the current player's position, and we'll update the position of each player in the result. And after that, we should be having the game running. And here I need to add the conditions. So let's get it. If result dot count is 0, then we'll just return because we don't need to do anything. And let's so after that we should have the check swap. We should be able to move the player, and we should be able to finish the game. We have it here, and Next, we need to set the message. So like the last video, I set up a turn event and called it the message, which is attached to the turn text. Set the text, and so let's start creating the game in Unity. So first, we'll create the prefabs. So we have the board prefab. Now let's create the player prefab. So for creating the player prefab, let's add the sprite to the scene. We call it player and save it as a prefab. So after adding the player, one that negative here, right, and a player is at 0, the player, and we have saved it as a prefab. And let's reset the color. So and let's add the card script. So card prefabs, get the color -1, and let's save it as a prefab, and let's start getting it from here. So let's first open the player prefab. The player prefab will have a piece script, so dash script and piece, and we need a card script. I've not changed. Yep, I've not changed to Unity. So in Unity, let's create the 3 prefabs out of the sprite and save it in the prefabs folder. And let's create the sprite. That is the object instance. So let's create a ch script and let's call it turn. Then we'll have a script for the constants. And then we'll have a script for the board. Any other scripts? Piece, card. Didn't create a script for the card, so card. And let's first start by editing the card. So inside the card, first we'll add a box collider and then we'll set the tag. So let's go inside prefabs. Instead of it color, we'll call it card, and let's open card. We don't need to change here. Let's add a box collider 2D and set its trigger to true. And let's add an animator component. Let's add a card script. For the animator, we need to create a new animator. So let's create a new animator in the player prefab animator controller, and we'll call it card controller. And let's add the animation controller, the card controller, and let's open the animation window. Animation. First, we'll create an idle animation, create animation, and we'll call it idle. We'll set the sample size to 2, and we need to set the looping to false. So let's open card control and false. Now let's add the all 3 animations. First one, going to call roll card and size to 6. Next one we are going to call role color, and there's sample size to 6. Last one we are going to call role shape, and similarly set the sample size to 6. So we have for the card color and shape. Now let's create the constants which we need to get it from the role card. So let's open the scripts folder and let's set it to a random because we'll need the functions to be called in the role shape. So let's go inside the studio and let's open the card script. Right, scripts the card, and here we add card. I added the card script to the card. So inside the card script, first we'll need a constant. Let's first roll a card. So the first thing we'll do is roll a card. So for rolling the card, we'll need the game state and we'll set it. We'll call it, and let's first add the sprite. So let's select serialize field, add a list of sprites. And the first one is going to be the card sprites. Next we'll need for the color sprites, and the last we'll need for the shape sprites. And let's create the random functions. So create the start update. So let's add a string for the card type. So let's create the random public void set random card, and inside set random card we'll first get a reference to the sprite renderer. Sprite renderer, equals to get component sprite renderer. After getting the sprite renderer, we'll set the sprite to card sprites at a random index, random.range from 0 to the card sprites dot count. So it will set the random image to card. Let's copy it again, and we'll do for the set random color, and inside color, instead of card sprites, color sprites, and instead of card sprites dot count, color sprites dot. Similarly for the set random shape, instead of color sprites we'll have the shape sprites, and here shape sprites dot count. So we can get the card, the color, and the shape. Now let's start editing the constant script because we need the game manager. So constant is just going to be a class, edit, and it's going to be a static class. Add it from mono behavior. Inside it, we'll have all our constants. So inside the constants, first we'll have a public string, constant string, and we'll call it roll card. We'll set it to be a color card, and let's call it again roll color, roll shape, and we'll have the move back 1 step and the move forward 2 steps. So let's just call it move forward public move back equals to back step, and click on string forward forward 2 steps, and we'll get it in the game manager. So inside the game manager, I have not created the game quit and the game restart function. Let's create it now. So let's go void game quit and just call app quit. If it is a Unity editor, so hashtag f to editor, all Unity editor dot editor application dot string to and diff, and the public void game restart. Inside the game restart, we'll just say in Unity engine dot scene management dot scene manager dot load scene 0, which is the initial scene. Now let's add the update method and let's add the await method. So let's see in the design document what we need to create. So we have the set random shape. Now we need to add the enums. So let's add it in the constants. So you can access it anywhere. So first will be the public enum player, and the players are going to be red, blue, green, yellow, purple, and orange. And we'll have a public enum choice, and the choice we have multiple options. The first are going to be the colors, which are here. I just copy paste it, and next we have the shapes. So inside shapes, first triangle, we have the square, and after square we have rectangle, after rectangle we have square, and 5-pointed star, hexagon, and the circle. Now inside the card, depending on the choice or the player or the game state, we'll set up the animations. So we'll call the animations, and we'll call the animation from the game manager whenever we click it. So let's add the functions. So first we'll add public void whole card. Here we'll first get the animator, get component animator, and we'll play the animation. So here roll card, first we need to set the current state. So card type equals to, we need to pass string temp, set the card type, and we'll call the animation. So animator dot play, and first we are rolling a card, so call roll card from the -1 layer starting at 0. So we'll copy it again, and the next one is going to be for the roll color, and inside role color we'll get a choice of choice. We'll set, we have not added the choice, so string card type and choice. So we'll set the current choice. Current choice is equals to choice, and we'll play the role card. Here we'll play the role color animation, and inside whole shape. The animation we are going to play is the role shape. We have created it, and at the end we need to set set set. At the end we need to set the card or the color, whatever. So let's create three functions for that. So we'll call public void set card, and inside set card we need to check. Let's get the sprite renderer first. Sprite renderer equals to get component renderer, and we'll say renderer dot sprite equals to, depending the choice, so current choice equals to first choice dot red, then set it to the color sprites of 0, and then we'll check the next. So let's just add color sprites of, if it is nothing. So here we need to add conditions, and the next condition, let's add the sprites first in Unity. So inside Unity, let's go inside Unity and let's add the sprites. So the sprites are going to add it in the card prefab. So prefab, and let's add the 4 sprites. So first sprite is going to be the roller color. So let's add sprite is going to shape. Next ones, go forward 2 steps, backward ones. I didn't, okay, accent. So we have added the sprites and can play the animation depending on the game state. So let's see card. Let's go to the studio. Side set card. Instead of, we'll say card type equals to constants dot. First one is the role color. So if we are going to roll a color, then we'll set it to the 0th color shape forward and back. So we'll set to card sprites of 0, and next we'll have, let's go, card type is equals to shape, set it to the first. Next, set it to 2 and set it to 3, and at the end set it to card sprites at the 0th index. So if it is a role color, we'll set it to first. Here we'll check for move forward, and the last one is going to be the back. So we can play the animation. At the end, let's now, and inside the game manager, let's let's create the animations. The set function, public void set card. Next up, we have for the public void and set color, and we'll pass choice. Need to pass the choice. Get the sprite renderer. Renderer, renderer, and will renderer dot sprite equals true, and depending on the current choice. So if current choice equals to red, then will color sprites of 0. Next we'll have for the blue, green, yellow, purple, and the orange. 1 for the blue, and 2 for the green, and 3 yellow, green, yellow. Yeah, the purple, and the last it will just add it color sprite 0, green, and purple. Add it fourth, and last one is going to be the orange. Set it to similarly for the set shape. Here instead of color sprites, and instead of color sprites, shape sprites, shapes. First we'll check for their triangle, and we'll check for the rectangle where star, last one circle, and for the hexagon. We have created all the functions, so let's create the animations. So let's go inside Unity and let's add the animation. Hit play, and there is no error. Let's select the card, and we have selected the card. Add the roll card animation. Let's add an event. Roll card, all the set random card event, and is reach frame. Inside the last frame, we need to set the animation of random card. We need to set the other card. Then we have the roll shape animation, and it's similar. Set random, and set a random color. Copy and paste it again. Last, set the color. Similarly for the roll shape animation, let's set the sample size to 6. Let's add the loop. All the Inside the roll shape, add an event. Let's add the set random shape event times. Instead of setting a random shape at the shape, so we won't be able to see these animations because we don't have the input for the game state and the player choice. So we need to call it from the game manager. So we have all the functions ready and have the choices. So let's go inside. Let's add all the shapes and the sprites. So add the card, 6 color sprites, 6 sprites. So sprites, first we have for the red, blue, green, yellow, purple, and the last one's for the orange. And inside the shape sprites, out for the fill, fill, and the square. And next we'll have for the star, zone, and three for the. So we have it ordered. Uh, Red, blue, green, yellow, purple, orange, a rectangle, square, star, and the rectangle, square, star, hexagon, red, orange. So let's call it inside the game manager. And inside the game manager, we'll have first the public bool can click and has game finished. Let me switch to the Visual Studio. So in the update method, first we'll check if not can click or has game finished, then we'll return. And the awake function, let's add the public static game manager instance. So public static game manager, and in the awake function we'll set the instance. If we set the instance this is by game object, and after setting up the instance we'll set the can click and can click is equals to true, and as game finished to false. And after doing that, we should be able to click it. So let's add a new constant to add the choice and the die. Are the constants we used. We'll get a random choice from that constant, and first our choice shapes the colors. So we'll need first a string for the game state, and next we'll need a choice of the player choice, and this will be needed. So let's go in update. So in update, if we can click, then we'll check for the mouse button press. So dot get down of 0, and we'll do the follow. So if we can press the button, then let's do a raycast vector pose. In forward point and get it at the input of mouse, convert it into a 2, the new 2, cross x, and we'll do a raycasted 2D, call it hit x 2D dot raycast from compose 2D to dot, and if we don't hit anything, not hit dot collider, then we'll just return. And if we hit dot collider dot compare tag, and the tag is a card, then we'll do the following. So first we'll check the game state. So at the start, let's set the game state. So game state is equals to constants dot roll card, and we'll switch the game state. And for the first case, if it is constants dot roll card, then we'll set the game state to the next state. So we'll set the game state equals to card choice and set it to a random choice. So set random dot range 0 to card choice dot, and we'll pass it to the card. So you can get the card from it dot collider dot game object dot get component card, and inside that card call whole card and pass game state. So we'll call the roll card, and after rolling the card, we'll set can click to false, and inside the card, we'll set the can click to true. So at the set card, we'll call the game manager dot instance dot can click equals to true, and similarly, we'll do it for this color and the shape. So we should be able to click it. Now let's add the functionality for the role color and the role shape. So the game state is the role color. Then we'll don't need to update the game state, but we need to get a random color choice. So let's set it and we'll call it current choice, player choice. So choice and hit player choice, and for the okay, we already created it. Let's add guys it. So we'll set the player choice to be a random player choice. Set it from the color. We have the colors, so from the colors and random dot range from 0 till colors dot count, and similarly the role shape player choice game object dot instead of role card with our role color player choice, and similarly for role shape will all player choice equals to shapes at random dot range from 0 till shapes dot count. So at a random shape, and we'll roll the shape on the card. So play the card animation, and instead of roll color, call roll shape. Similarly, for the roll shape, we have the instance dot set can click to true. So after this, we should be able to click the card. So let's see if we can do it in Unity. So let's open Unity and let's hit play. Hit play. There are no errors. We have not added the card to the scene. So let's add the card to the scene and position it, add negative 4, and its card is not defined. Okay, we need to add the tag to the card. So inside the card prefab, let's add a tag, and that's it. So we can roll a card and again can roll a shape. Okay, the game state is not updating at the end. So after we roll color or roll shape, we are the problem is here. Here we updated the game state, but here we need to again update the game state. Before can click to false, set the game state to constants dot roll card because we need to roll the card again. And similarly, the roll shape, we won't need it afterwards, but for now, let's see if we can constantly roll the card, and depending on the card choice, we should be able to get the roll color or the. So let's hit play. This one is the roller color and the color. After we should be able to roll another card. So again it's roll a color, then it goes again, so it's working iteratively. Let's why is it always showing roll a color? Their choice. M dot range from 0 to shape dot count. And with the card choice we have so many options. If other roll a color, okay, now it's roll a shape. It was just probability because there are 6. Now we have to get an error. Hmm. We are rolling a shape. Color. So it is working and we need to add the functions for the next two. Maybe there is no problem because we are getting both. So there should. So we have created the role and the role animation. So I'll go inside the design document and let's see what next we'll need to create. We have the card animations and we can click it. We have set the state. Now we need to instantiate the player. So for instantiating the player, we need to create a player prefab, which we have already created it. And let's start editing the player prefab. So the size is going to be the same. Let's add a piece script. And we just need to edit the piece script. So at the start, we need to set the color of the player and the start position. So let's start editing the P scripts. Let's open the P script and inside the P script, first we'll set the color. So we need to get the color. Serialize field, list of color, and we'll just call it colors. And we need to the awake. We need to set the let's update method. Inside the colors, we need to set the colors. Public void set color, and it take a player and depending on the player we'll set the colors. So let's set the sprite renderer is equals to get component renderer, and we'll set the renderer dot sprite is equals to and colors, and depending on the player we'll cast it to an integer. Players are 6 and the colors are so renderer dot sprite renderer dot color equals to color. So we should be able to instantiate the players. So players are going to be instantiated in the game manager. So let's add it in the game manager and we'll instantiate in the start function. And we need to add the start position and the game object. So let's add first the list of player and we'll call it players because we need to get the list, and we'll have an integer for the current player, and then we'll have a dictionary from player to game object and we'll call it pieces, and we'll need the player itself, so it will going to be a game object and we'll call it game piece, and we'll need the start position vector3 start pose. So let's set it up in the awake. So in awake we are setting up the game state, and next we need to set up is the players. So players going to be new list of player and current player is equals to 0, and the pieces is going to be a new dictionary, and dictionary players and the current player, and we need to instantiate the players. So for int I is equals to 0, I less than 6, we'll add the player players dot add, and we'll add I and we'll cast it to a player, and after adding that player we'll instantiate a game object, instantiate game piece, and we'll set its positions current piece dot transfer dot position is equals to start pose, and we'll call the set color function game piece dot get component, and inside the piece component we'll set the color I and we need to cast it to an layer, and we'll add it to the dictionary. So pieces of I, and it's cast it to a player is equals to current piece, so we can refer to that player. So it should instantiate new players. So let's see if it is working in Unity. So let's go inside Unity, and for the game manager we'll add the prefab and the start position. Let's add a player here, and let's set it start position. Let's see. So negative 2.415. So the start position is going to be at negative 2.005 and 2.45. So let's add this start pause in game manager. Start pause is at negative 2.005 and 2.15 and negative 1. And let's check to 2.5. So let's hit play. It should instantiate 6 game objects at the start position. It's instantiating only one, non-negative and size piece. So there's we are not set the colors, so we need to set the colors inside the piece. So let's go inside the piece prefab, player prefab, and let's add the 6 colors. And 6 colors, set its alpha. And the game, let's zoom in, and we have the red. Next up we have the blue, and we have the green, yellow, the purple, and the last up we have on. So when we hit play, we should have 6 game objects. Let's hit play, and we should have 6 game objects. So the orange, blue, purple, yellow, green, and the red. Let's click roll. So and let's get a card again. We'll roll a color, and let's hit the card again. Yep. And we need to add can click to false. That was the error here. Now after that we should be able to instantiate the players. So let's see what we need to do next in the design document. This one's going to be a long video. Maybe I'll need to split it up in parts and edit and join it. So next we need to create the board. So inside the board we'll need to add the update position method. It will have 2 methods and 1 method for the check swap, which we are going as just parameter. So let's